What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So now the Switch 2's been out for several days, people of course have had a chance to check the system out and play a bunch of games, newer ones, as well as games from their back catalog. And in fact, some of the stuff people are finding is genuinely surprising at times, so much so that they've come together online, many people have, and they're making spreadsheets and lists to document a bunch of the different improvements that have been provided by this new system with a feature that Nintendo has actually kind of undersold, but we'll go over some of the more interesting results here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Konami, as they do have a big presentation for this week that might lead to another big announcement there. And then we'll also be talking about Xbox with their new ROG Ally X handheld, because it turns out Sony may also have a new system on their hands here. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're gonna start today with an announcement from Mr. Miyamoto himself. In fact, he made sure we all knew it, as you can see here. This is posted up on their official account saying, "This is Miyamoto. For production reasons, we are changing the release date of the live-action film, The Legend of Zelda, to May 7th, 2027. It will be some weeks later than the release timing we originally announced, and we will take the extra time to make the film as good as it can be. Thank you for your patience." So this is like a 5-week delay. We're talking about a delay for this, a movie that's like just a little under 2 years away, in 2027, and it's okay. I really don't think this delay is hitting people very hard right now. It's like, oh, we gotta wait 5 more weeks for something that's almost 2 years away still. It was just kind of odd, I guess, that they pop up here and they're like, oh, guys, we gotta let you know now. It's not coming out in March 2027. It's coming out in May of 2027. I wonder what happened. I don't know. They say production, scheduling, maybe. Who knows? But there you go. You'll have to wait till May of 2027 for the live-action Zelda movie now. Also, this went a bit under the radar for Gears of War Reloaded, as there is a beta happening this week for it. This we can see posted up. This is over on Xbox Wire, where they say Gears of War Reloaded, of course, will launch August 26th. However, there will be a beta that starts June 13th. That's going to be through pre-orders on the Xbox Series X, S, Xbox on PC, Steam, and PlayStation 5. They say it's a 2-weekend multiplayer beta. Now, if you're a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, PC Game Pass subscriber, or I guess you own the Gears of War Ultimate Edition digitally, you'll also get access to the multiplayer beta. So I'm going to make everyone aware, because that kind of flew under the radar a bit. I didn't even notice it necessarily until I think Nate mentioned it to me. So just wanted to throw that out there for anyone who would to just try out Gears of War Reloaded. Again, a 2-weekend beta that's starting actually this weekend, June 13th. So make sure you have whatever you need sorted there if you really want to get into it and check out Gears of War Reloaded early. Oh, and we have an update for some of the multimedia apps on the Switch 2, specifically YouTube. You can see this posted up. This is in response to a person asking about the YouTube application on the Switch 2, where they say, "We're working with Nintendo to make YouTube available on the Switch 2 soon. For a list of devices YouTube is available on, head over here." They go, okay, cool, Brett. But in this case, yes, for the Switch 2, the multimedia apps aren't necessarily compatible with it. And yes, we'll have to have specific Switch 2 applications made available from like YouTube or Hulu or so on there. I do wonder, I guess we'll get 4K versions of those applications. It's like, why not? The system supports it. So it's just something we'll have to keep an eye out for, with it being added, I guess, at some point in the future. Honestly, they can just drop it whenever. It's a free application, sure. But I know it comes back to the idea that, hey, this is a game system first, so who cares about the multimedia apps, but it's just nice to have. I mean, it just adds to the value of the system and the functionality, so why not? And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Switch 2 and a feature that I will admit, I feel like Nintendo undersold a bit. Now, they did tell us about the free updates that were happening, or these upgrades for things like Mario Odyssey, obviously Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That has got like the big spotlight right now because of how busted up they were on the Switch 1, but even titles like The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, and Echoes of Wisdom that had very, very choppy frame rates, especially in the overworld, those have mostly been completely smoothed out as well. But there's an entire catalog of older titles that Nintendo really didn't mention at all. And people are finding some very interesting results going back and honestly just loading up games and seeing how they run. That's kind of where we are right now. I will say we have some limitations here, of course, as resolution targets that were in place I mean, you max it 720p handheld, 1080p in docked mode. Kind of. That's another interesting part here. But in terms of like the roof, 1080p in general. So you're not going to see an upscale to 4K that's really, really clean necessarily. But the frame rate has always been an issue with the Switch 1 and some of these different titles, third party or even first party. So people started to come together here on different forums, even making spreadsheets on Google Drive, just documenting all these tests they're doing. And they're finding that basically all these games are capped at their frame rate, so 30 or 60 if it's uncapped, even with the performance mode, and they're all hitting the highest resolution target that's available with that dynamic resolution that would typically be in play. So if you have something that is 720p handheld, 1080p docked, and it's just an uncapped frame rate, you're most likely getting 720p 60 and then 1080p 60. But it goes a little beyond that. So again, people have been testing. I'll give you guys some examples here, okay? So for one, Age of Calamity. We know a lot of these Warriors games and stuff end up being pretty choppy on the Switch 1. It's just running just steady, locked 30 FPS. That's the cap for it. We would have to see some of these companies go back, these developers, and just lift the frame rate cap. All right, through like an update of some kind to get it beyond that. Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, that's just locked at 60 FPS. Tales of Vesperia is the interesting one because the frame rate, it's limited to 30 FPS in the open world, but elsewhere it's just 60 FPS and it's locked completely. Bayonetta 3, which was plagued with very unstable frame rates, that's just locked at 60 FPS. The resolution could use some help, and that's something I wouldn't mind seeing Platinum or Nintendo go back and maybe do just a free update for to fix up some of the resolution, because look, it's quick, but you can kind of lose track of things and stuff will break apart while the fight's going on. So that would be cool, just kind of match the frame rate there. MLB The Show, which has been like these Major League Baseball games ever since they came to the Switch, have been choppy to say the least. It's just locked 60 frames per second now. I did try out Red Faction Guerrilla. That was one that came to mind because I know that has like a performance mode. And yeah, it's just running at 60 FPS now, uncapped. Neo The World Ends With You, same deal there at 60 FPS. Trials of Mana, 60 FPS. And an odd one for me, people are starting to mention that Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, like I thought it was capped at 30 FPS, but it seems like it's 60 now. And when I read that, I said, oh, let me load this thing up. I pop it into the Switch 2 and I check it out. I'm like, yeah, this is running way smoother. It does look like it's 60 FPS. I don't know if something weird is going on there with Snowdrop, but then you look at Sparks of Hope, that is just outright capped at 30 FPS. So I'm not sure if there's just something weird going on here with that game, but yeah, it's running a lot smoother. It appears to be 60 FPS. Now, I mentioned 720p kind of for some of these games in handheld mode. Well, there are some titles, believe it or not, that rendered at 1080p on the Switch 1 and downsampled to 720p. Great example. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. That is 1080p in handheld mode, which means it matches the native resolution of the Switch 2, so it actually looks pretty good there. And get this, yes, it's locked at 60 FPS, so Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition right now on the Switch 2 handheld mode, it's actually very, very good. Now, there are a few others that are doing that as well. I saw Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist. That's also 1080p in handheld mode, which probably would help just based on the fact there's a lot of text and reading you have to do there, of course, so you want it to be as sharp as possible. But the bottom line is, it ends up being a pretty good device to go back to your Switch 1 library, and I know it's like you bought a new system to play old games. I gotta tell you though, some of those games on the Switch 1 were rough to play through. At times, or most of the time, I'll say with the Switch 1. So this is kind of like seeing a lot of those games for the first time in some cases. And if you're somebody who just avoided a lot of these titles because of these performance or even, we'll say, resolution issues where the resolution dropped to 540p in dock mode, you're not seeing that as much anymore, okay? So the resolution is pretty much at the ceiling or the roof most times, and then same with the frame rate. So it's just something really cool as these are just running through this emulation layer that Nintendo has with the Switch 2, and along with that, you have faster load times, etc. So really cool to see, and it's fun seeing some of the discoveries people are making with these different games, as there's thousands and thousands of titles that people are testing and just kind of throwing out results. So let me know if there are any games from your back catalog that you've tried in the Switch 2, the Switch 1 games, that you found some very interesting results for, and let me know in the comments. Next up, let's talk about Konami, as it looks like they are set up with their own little event, little live stream happening now. They have 2 games specifically that they're mentioning, but seems like they might have another one. Okay, so we can see this posted up. This is by Gamatsu, with the little card there for Konami. It's called Press Start. I think it's Konami press start, not just Konami and then press start. So okay, but the live stream's on June 12th at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern time. They say it features game news and updates. All right, and you can see that obviously the two that they have here, which they did put out in the press release: Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater and Silent Hill F. Now, along with this, they say just quote unquote and more. By the way, this is a 37-minute program. Apparently there's going to be Konami developers and producers there. They're going to have extended looks at both of those games, but and more has everyone going crazy with speculation, because this does feel like a different Konami. Not the one that's going to be like, hey, here's Metal Gear Solid Delta, here's Silent Hill F. Now let's wheel that new Castlevania pachinko machine out on stage and tell you all about it. Now it feels more like this would be the Konami instead of the pachinko machine. It'd be a new Castlevania game. That's kind of the territory we're in now, and it's actually very exciting for just gaming in general to have Konami kind of back to this standard, we'll say. So immediately when I see this, I go, okay, we have a Metal Gear here. We have a Silent Hill game here. I guess it would make sense to have Castlevania, as that's been rumored for a while, and I would like to see a 2D Castlevania game. I know, look, the 3D Castlevania, like, people like the first one that was, on the 360 and stuff, that was fine. The second one was eh. But I would just like to see it really go back to a high-quality 2D Castlevania game and just see where we can kind of go from there. Otherwise, we do have that Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2 that's been talked about and hinted at for a while, with Metal Gear Solid 4 included. Maybe they decided to mention that here with Delta coming up. Hey, we have some more Metal Gear Solid stuff following in 2026. We'll give you at least an early teaser or a look at it here. So at this point, to me, the door is wide open for Konami. They could legitimately surprise us with something really cool, or disappoint everyone and get the pachinko machine. But something tells me they're gonna most likely surprise people with something good, as opposed to some of the older E3s they had where really it was just a lot of nothing. Next up, let's talk about that new handheld from Microsoft, the ROG Xbox Ally X. That's at least the top of the line model. There's another one there without the X on it, but I'm sure people are curious as to how like the top tier one will be able to run games. In fact, some have wondered, how will it run God of War, Days Gone, Horizon Zero Dawn? Well, there's been this thought process that Sony wouldn't allow these games on any of these Xbox handhelds or devices in the future. Well, it seems like that's going to be kind of difficult for Sony to figure out. See, we can see this posted up. This is over on GameFile. It's from Steven Totillo. It says, when I asked Microsoft if that means that PlayStation's recent God of War games, which have been released on PC, could run on these new Xbox branded devices, a device with a big Xbox button and logo on it, a rep replied, because these handhelds run Windows, you have access to all the games you can play on Windows PCs. And that is, to me, going to be the difficult part for Sony. How do you block a device that's just running Windows and then it's just running Steam? People have said, okay, there's definitely a way for Sony to do this, but they're not doing it for these Xbox handhelds. And I know technically it's an Asus device with Xbox branding, but Microsoft has a pretty serious hand in this device with the software side and the UI, and seems like it's going to be like sort of their pilot program for this new OS that they're putting together that will unify, at least that's what it feels like, Windows side with PC and like the computers and everything, and then your Xbox console that you would buy maybe for next generation, and then an eventual handheld, maybe even from Microsoft themselves, years and years down the line. This kind of feels like where it all starts. So if we're seeing right away that yes, you can just start installing PlayStation games to go to Steam, it does make you wonder how Sony views that PC side a bit now, right? I mean, maybe there's a way for them to block the Xbox console. I don't really see it. And also, you think Valve would really do that? That's the other question I have. Is Valve even interested in blocking these things from Steam? Because while Steam does have curation, I don't really know if you're going to have Valve go, yeah, we'll just start blocking platforms. Doesn't really seem to be like a Pandora's box that they want to necessarily open at this point. So I kind of feel like Sony's stuck a little bit here. Do they want to continue down the road of PC and potentially end up on Xbox branded devices, Microsoft systems, or do they want to remove that revenue stream that has at least seemingly worked pretty well for them, especially with something like Helldivers 2, and just go back to console only in, let's face it, a market that isn't exactly growing year over year or anything when it comes to more and more people coming into the console space. So, I don't know. Interesting spot for Sony, but I guess we'll see as these Xbox handhelds come out later on in the year, how Sony figures out maybe if they can respond to it. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about review scores for Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. We know, of course, Nintendo, they sent out review units the day before the system released, which means that any game that was coming out on that system specifically was going to sort of be behind when it comes to reviews coming out around release. Well, now we're starting to see reviews trickle out for Mario Kart World, as we already talked about, but also Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and we can see the Metacritic score for it. Yeah, it's sitting at a 50. That's on 19 reviews. I mean, the user score, look, people just are annoyed at this thing for it even costing money at this point, so yeah, the user score is going to be low. Let's see what we have here for a split. We have 1 positive review, 14 mixed, and 4 negative. Well, let's take a look at the positive review. It is from Nintendo Life. Welcome Tour is a calming, surprisingly engaging hardware exhibition with a handful of cool minigames, a trove of interesting info, and some neat demos that showcase exactly what the little system can do. And then we'll go to the other side here. Let's take a look at... Okay, we have Metro Game Central, who says a bizarre attempt to celebrate the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the most boringest way possible with a limp collection of unentertaining minigames made even duller by suffocatingly clinical presentation. Wow, okay. Looking at Game Rant, gave it a 30. Says, Switch 2 Welcome Tour is not an enjoyable experience in the least, but it does have a few redeeming qualities. The giant-sized versions of Switch 2 hardware looks cool, and there is more to do than expected. They also mentioned that in order to 100% the game, you'll need to buy just about all the accessories. People doing math is like $100 some odd worth of accessories in order to everything in the game, which, I mean, yeah, the game introduces you to all the accessories, so you'd probably need the accessory to do the minigame. The point here is, this should have just been included with the system because, in a way, it also works to sell the accessories then. There are people out there, I'm sure, who want to 100% the game that they just spent $10 on. So the whole thing seems weird to me that it wasn't a packing game. It's funny, out of all the stuff right now for the Switch 2 that people are annoyed about or complain about, that's the one that, for me, shows the most Nintendo hubris there, is the $10 Welcome Tour, because it does remind me of the situation back with the Wii, where Reggie apparently had a campaign to get Wii Sports as a pack-in title for the system. Otherwise, they would have sold it separately alongside of it, which, I mean, Wii Sports worked really, really well to teach you the system, so it only makes sense to come with it. Also, funny part about that, the one region where the Wii Sports wasn't packed in to the Wii was in Japan, and turns out data showed that, yeah, it was a good idea to pack that title in. So in this case, I just think it would have been a nice thing to have thrown in there because, let's face it, it's basically an interactive instruction manual. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if the next Xbox can run Steam, do you expect PlayStation games to work? 70% say yes, any Steam PlayStation game, that'll run fine. 30% say no, Sony will figure out a way to block them. And it's not even necessarily about the Xbox handheld that's releasing towards the end of this year, because most of us look at that as it's a ROG ally with Xbox branding. This is more about the future, a few years from now. When Microsoft releases their next generation Xbox console, we kind of figure it's going to be running Windows similar to this handheld, which will evolve over time. They're going to be updating this device, and eventually a version of that will just be on Xbox, and it'll probably be available on PC. So at that point, again, I'm not really sure how you figure that out if you're Sony, other than just to not put your games on Steam anymore, and that's a fairly lucrative market for them at this time, so why do that? And it's just going to make next generation look very, very strange overall. I mean, do we get to the point where Sony starts including, like, PC Xbox logo, Xbox on PC or PC on Xbox, the branding that Microsoft's going with now? Does that start showing up on Sony PlayStation shows? I don't know. It's again, it's all very, very weird, this whole thing. So we'll see in a couple of years when Microsoft launches their next generation system, how all of that pans out. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Danny, who says, just curious, should the price point affect games review? Like the score, I'm going to say yes, because when a game comes out, immediately before you even play it, you see the price tag, you assign some sort of value to that thing. So, example, Expedition 33 is $50. You may think right away, okay, that's probably a pared down experience in some way. You get it, you play it, and you're like, wow, this was really good. It blew away my expectations for a $50 game. Conversely, if you get a game that's $80, and this is what Mario Kart World's going through right now a little bit online because it's an $80 game, your expectations are heightened at that time. All right, you're like, wow, this is going to be crazy. There's probably some insane story mode for Mario Kart World. Maybe there's an open world area like we have, but it's more dense, and there's all these different races and characters. Like, you kind of in your mind already starting to form the game. So yes, I do think price is clearly should affect the review because it has value directly attached to it. We just talked about Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. If that game was a pack-in title and it was free, I feel like it would have reviewed higher. Because immediately people are like, you have to buy it separately. You got to spend money. It's not with it. So let's be a little more strict on this thing and let's really put it under the microscope. Even though it's $10, that's not free. So I think price should. Even though down the line you might get it on sale and be like, wow, this $10 game is way better than the 7 out of 10 or something that IGN gave it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear the answer to, one of the biggest questions I had during my midnight release live stream for the Switch 2, and that's, does the Make Switch brick the system? Well, I found that out in a video and I'll leave it right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.